The wind came low and mean across the flats, dragging a curtain of grit that scraped the teeth and clung to sweat-slicked skin. A rider broke from the haze like a ghost returned from war, tall in the saddle, rifle slung loose, hat shadowing a face carved from regret. His horse moved like it knew where it was going, even if the man didn't. Ezekiel Holt hadn't spoken in 3 days. Words stuck in his throat like old gunpowder. He'd learned long ago the desert didn't care for stories. It cared for silence, for survival, for what a man was willing to bury in the sand behind him. He rode into Burnt Creek at sundown, a town half-swallowed by its own failures. Porch steps groaned beneath the weight of drunks and dying men. A sign swung from rusted hooks over the saloon, its paint blistered by too many summers. The piano inside was broken, each note a different kind of ache, but nobody noticed anymore. Zeke tied his horse outside and stepped through the swinging doors like a slow-moving storm. Heads turned. A few men stiffened, recognized the long coat, the scar under his eye, the silence he carried like a sidearm. He didn't need to announce himself. They knew. At the back of the saloon, a man with a sheriff's star and a whiskey gut waited with a cigar burning down to ash. He didn't rise. "You still take gold for finding folk?" he asked. Zeke nodded once. The sheriff slid a folded paper across the table. The ink was fresh, the face sketched with rough hands but sharp features, cheekbones like blades, hair like crow feathers, eyes that could cut glass. "No crime listed," Zeke said. "She's dangerous." "That's enough." He stared at the drawing. Something stirred deep in the back of his mind, like a dream that had once been real. Her eyes weren't unfamiliar. But that was impossible. He folded the paper and pocketed it without a word. "They want her alive," the sheriff added. "You bring her back breathing, you get 500. You bring her back dead." He paused, looked around, lowered his voice. "You don't bring her back dead." Zeke didn't reply. He turned and walked out before the whiskey-soaked lies could settle too thick in the air. Out in the street, dusk poured itself across the sky, fire orange fading to indigo. The sun dipped behind the hills like it, too, wanted no part in what came next. He rode out that same night. He followed the trail like a man chasing a ghost, though he didn't know her name. The paper hadn't said. Just wanted. Just a reward. The signs were strange. Not settler tracks, but careful movements through canyon and brush. Smoke from fireless camps. Stones arranged in circles that meant something to someone. He found animal bones, clean-picked and stacked in quiet patterns, and once, near a creek, the soft humming of a lullaby that vanished as soon as it reached his ears. That night, he dreamed of a woman's voice he hadn't heard in 15 winters. Not words, just the rhythm of her, the way she used to press her palm to his chest when he couldn't sleep. He woke with his hand over his heart, the fire down to glowing coals. 2 days later, he found blood on a sagebrush leaf. Dried. Not enough for death, just a wound. Nearby, he saw the shape of a knee pressed in soft earth, the scatter of medicinal roots left behind in a hurry. Whoever she was, she knew how to vanish. But not without trace. Not without intention. And that's what unsettled him most. Zeke wasn't new to hunting. He'd tracked killers through blizzards, deserters through river marshes, men who changed their names like coats. But this was different. This wasn't a chase. It felt like he was being led. And each step brought the picture in his pocket to life. At night, he unfolded the drawing by firelight. It didn't look like a killer. It looked like someone who knew things worth dying for. Her eyes were not cruel, they were aware. He tried not to think about why that mattered. On the 5th day, in a dry ravine, he came upon a settler wagon burned black, axle split, the smell of old blood still thick in the dirt. Buzzards wheeled high above. The corpses had been buried or dragged away. But there was something else. A child's boot print, small and recent. And nearby, pressed into the dust beside it, a handprint. Adult. Protective. Facing outward. She was helping people. That didn't mean she wasn't dangerous. But it meant something else, too. Something inconvenient. Zeke didn't like questions he couldn't shoot his way through. He made camp in a narrow valley, with one way in and out. The night air was still. Too still. Firelight danced on the canyon walls, and the stars blinked like cold eyes watching from beyond the veil. He heard movement before he saw her. A rustle in the brush, the soft crunch of gravel under bare feet. His hand went to his rifle, but he didn't raise it. Not yet. She stepped from the shadows like a ghost given flesh. No gun. No fear. Just those same hawk eyes from the drawing, now lit with fire glow and something older than anger. "I wondered when you'd come," she said. Zeke didn't speak. She stepped closer, slowly, like approaching a wounded animal. "Do you remember me?" He frowned. The fire cracked. Somewhere in the hills, a coyote howled. "I don't," he said, though the lie tasted bitter. She smiled without humor. "Then I guess you'll have to follow me longer." And just like that, she turned and vanished into the dark. He didn't give chase. Not right away. He sat there, alone by the fire, the stars above him shifting like a map he couldn't read, and for the first time in a long, long while, Ezekiel Holt felt afraid, not of dying, but of what he'd already forgotten. In the distance, her song began again, soft, wordless, the same rhythm that once soothed a baby's cries. And something in him, long buried beneath the weight of bullet scars and broken years, began to stir. The sky broke open with rain the next morning, the first in months. It came soft and steady, not the hard, punishing kind that stripped topsoil from rock, but a quiet, almost reverent fall, like the land had been holding its breath and finally let go. Zeke pulled his hat low, let the water roll down his shoulders, and followed her tracks into the high country where pine and fog swallowed the hills like secrets. The woman, Isla, he now knew her name, moved like a ghost. But ghosts didn't leave healing bundles tied in trees for the sick. Ghosts didn't hum lullabies while tending to the dying. Zeke found her marks along the trail, careful as a surgeon's touch, charcoal sigils drawn on bark, medicine tied in deer sinew, always facing east. Signs he'd seen once before, long ago, beside a woman whose name he'd tried to forget. He found an old settler lying in a lean-to halfway up the ridge, fevered and coughing blood. The man's eyes were wild when Zeke stepped into view until he saw the coat and the rifle. Then he slumped, too far gone to care. "She came through," the man rasped. "Apache woman. Thought she'd kill me. Didn't." He coughed until it bent his spine. "Left tea. Prayers too. I told her to run. Men are coming." Zeke crouched beside him, watched the man tremble with a hand on his chest like he was trying to keep his heart from leaving early. He didn't ask who sent the men. He already knew. By the time he reached the upper grove, the rain had thinned to mist. Trees loomed like cathedral pillars, and smoke curled faint from a hidden fire. Zeke kept low. His steps were silent. He didn't draw his weapon, though his fingers itched for it. She was kneeling beside a small child, no more than 4 or 5, arms wrapped in a wool blanket too big for her. Isla spoke softly, in Apache, words Zeke couldn't catch, but the tone was maternal, anchoring, familiar. The girl coughed once, and Isla wiped her mouth with the back of her hand, the movement instinctive. Zeke stepped on a wet branch. The crack was quiet, but not enough. Isla stood, spun fast, blade drawn. Not a pistol. Asterisk, asterisk, a knife, asterisk, asterisk. She didn't scream. Her eyes found his, and she froze. "I told you to keep following," she said coldly. "Not to sneak." "I wasn't sneaking," Zeke said. Isla's gaze dropped to the rifle at his side. "Could have shot you 3 times by now," he added. She didn't laugh, didn't smile. "Why haven't you?" He didn't have an answer. The child peeked out from behind her, eyes wide with the ancient fear all children learn too early, men with weapons, men with orders, men who never stay to explain what they've done. "I'm not here for her," Zeke said quietly. "She yours?" Isla hesitated. "She's not a target." Didn't say she was. Rain dripped from the trees. A blue jay called once and went silent. Isla lowered the knife. "Not all the way. Just enough." Zeke took a breath. "What did you do?" Isla tilted her head, like the question bored her. To whom? Enough to earn a bounty and a price on your head. She stepped closer. He didn't move. They paid you to hunt me, not understand me, she said. Why change now? He studied her face, creased by sun and wind, but not age. She had the kind of beauty men wrote songs about, though they never sang them in daylight. A beauty hardened by survival, softened only when she looked at the child. I've killed men, she said finally, but never for pleasure. Never without cause. Can your employers say the same? Zeke didn't answer. I ran medicine upriver during the war, she continued. Helped bury 100 bodies under the flag your people call victory. Then I stopped burying bodies and started saving the living. That's when the trouble started. He took a step forward. She didn't flinch. They say slit a general's throat. I did, she replied. After he tried to slit a child's. Zeke's jaw tightened. The rain had stopped. The grove was still, holding its breath. She looked at him then hard. So what now, gunman? You gonna drag me back for gold? He could hear his heartbeat in his ears. They said bring you back alive. That's still the plan?
No.
She blinked, caught off guard. No. Zeke shook his head. Plan changed. Isla studied him, lips parting just slightly.
Why?
I don't know yet. The girl coughed again, and Isla turned, instinct guiding her hands as she reached into a pouch and poured a bitter-smelling tincture into the child's mouth. The little one whimpered, curled tighter in her blanket. Zeke watched, and remembered. A soft voice. A woman with dark hair, leaning over a cradle. That same tune, that same gentleness. He turned away, uneasy in his own skin. I saw a locket, he said. Back in a burned-out post near Dry, Washington. Had a sketch inside, looked like you. Holding a baby. Isla didn't reply. Was that her, he asked. Isla's silence stretched.
She's not mine, she said at last.
But I raised her. You knew my wife. Isla finally looked at him, and the anger in her face cracked, just slightly. I did. She died giving birth, didn't she? A nod. You saved the child. I tried. Zeke stepped closer. Why didn't you tell me? You were gone, she said. Off killing in the name of things you didn't understand. He flinched like she'd struck him. She had. She's alive, he whispered. Isla's voice softened. She is. And in that moment, under that dripping canopy, something shifted between them. Not trust, not yet, but something older. The weight of years, of choices made and not unmade. A thread stretched tight across time, between grief and grace. I need to see her, he said. Isla nodded once. Then you'll have to help me get there before they do. Zeke glanced toward the trail, where hoofbeats might already be closing in. I reckon we ride at first light. Then don't sleep too deep, she said, gathering the child into her arms. You're not the only one with a past that wants me dead. Zeke stood there long after she disappeared into the grove, watching the fog wind through the trees like smoke from a slow-burning fire. Something in him had broken open, but whether it was an old wound or the start of healing, he couldn't tell. The rain started again, just a whisper this time, like it knew they'd need the cover. The sky cracked open with heat by noon the next day, the rain gone like a promise broken too soon. Zeke rode behind Isla through winding gullies and sandstone cuts, where the rocks whispered old names he didn't understand. The girl lay quiet in Isla's arms, bundled tight and feverish. She hadn't spoken once since they left the grove, her breath thin as paper. Zeke didn't ask questions. Not yet. His mind was too full, turning over memories like unspent bullets. They stopped at a dried-up spring under a lone cottonwood. Isla dismounted with a groan, her knees stiff, eyes lined with sleeplessness. Zeke handed her a canteen without a word. She took it, drank deep, then trickled some between the girl's lips. She'll make it, he asked. If we keep moving. If they don't find us first. Her voice had lost none of its edge. But something else hung there now, fatigue. Fear. Maybe even a trace of trust. Zeke crouched in the shade, scanning the horizon. They'll come fast, now that they know I've switched sides. You think they know? They always do. Isla said nothing. She wrapped the girl tighter and sat close. Close enough that Zeke could smell the resin and sweat in her hair, the blood on her sleeves, the cedar smoke soaked into her coat. He reached into his saddlebag and pulled out the locket. Opened it. Held it out. This was hers, he said. Isla looked. The faintest smile flickered across her mouth, so brief it might have been grief dressed as something softer. She carried that from the day she left the mission. She ever speak of me? Isla's eyes met his. Not kindly. He nodded. Didn't think she would. I told her you'd been drafted. That you never came back. I didn't know the rest. Zeke shut the locket. I don't know the rest either. They rode hard through the red canyons until dusk bled across the sky. Coyotes started singing somewhere in the ravines. The child stirred once in her fevered sleep, murmured something in Apache. Isla's hand brushed her brow like a whisper. Zeke watched, feeling like he was looking at something holy and didn't deserve to. By nightfall they reached an abandoned relay station, a few broken walls, a collapsed roof, and a stone cellar that held just enough darkness to hide them. Zeke tied off the horses. Isla laid the girl on a bedroll and lit a small flame, shielding it with her body. The firelight cut across her face, catching the worry etched into her brow, the kind that came from raising a child who didn't belong anywhere. Zeke sat beside her. Neither spoke. The sound came faint at first, then again. Hooves. Distant, deliberate. He was on his feet in seconds, rifle in hand. They're here. Isla didn't panic. She snuffed the flame with her palm, already wrapping the girl back in her blanket. Zeke peeked through a crack in the stone. Moonlight silvered the edge of a ridge, and there they were. 4 riders. Maybe 5. Dark hats. Union coats turned outlaw. One of them had a lantern swinging from his saddle horn like a signal. They'll sweep down and box us in, Zeke muttered. Can we outrun them? Not with her. Isla met his gaze, and for once, there was no fight in it. Just grim acceptance. Then we stand. He nodded. They set their positions quick and quiet. Isla stayed with the girl in the cellar. Zeke climbed the crumbling roof and lay flat, his rifle balanced over the edge, scope trained on the narrow trail leading in. The wind had gone still. The stars blinked down like indifferent gods. When the first shot came, it wasn't from him. A crack echoed through the valley, then another. Wood splintered beside his ear. The bastards had eyes in the hills. They weren't coming down. They were flushing him out. Zeke rolled, fired once. A scream answered him from the ridge. One down. Then came a voice, echoing through the rocks. Ezekiel Holt. You're protecting a killer and a half-breed girl. That's treason in some territories. Zeke chambered another round. Wasn't planning to retire peaceful anyhow. More shots. Dirt kicked near his boots. He slid behind a chimney stack, breathing hard. His ribs ached from the ride, his hands cold despite the sweat. Below, he saw Isla crouch over the girl's still form, knife in one hand, eyes sharp as a hawk's. A shadow moved to the left. Zeke fired again, another body dropped. But they were closing in. Too many angles. Too much open ground. He climbed down fast, landed rough beside Isla. We can't hold here. Then take her, Isla said. She pulled the girl into his arms before he could argue. There's a back trail behind the stone wall. It drops into a ravine, then splits. I'll draw them off. Zeke shook his head.
No.
We stay together. They want me. Not her. Not you anymore. You've done enough, Zeke. He grabbed her arm. You're not dying tonight. I won't let you. She looked at him, really looked, and for the first time, he saw what she'd been holding back. Not hate. Not rage.
Hope.
I've never known a man who chose to come back, she whispered. Not once. Not truly. I didn't choose, he said. I was dragged. Her lips twitched at that. Almost a smile. Then the wall behind them blew inward with a thunder crack. Stone dust filled the air. Zeke covered the girl with his coat, pushed her under a broken beam. Gunfire tore through the ruins. Isla rose into the smoke like something carved from the land itself, eyes glowing with fury, knife and pistol both in hand. She moved fast, Too fast for a woman who hadn't slept in days. Struck once, twice. Screams followed. Zeke covered her flank, rifle hot, breath ragged. By the time the last shot echoed and the dust began to settle, 3 men were down. One crawled away, bleeding, begging. Zeke let him go. Isla stood in the ruin's mouth, chest rising and falling. Blood on her sleeve. A shallow cut on her cheek. But she was alive. So was the girl. Zeke limped over, wiped soot from his face. "We're not done yet." "No," she said. "But they won't try again tonight." He looked at her under the moonlight. This woman the world had painted as a monster. And all he saw was a mother. A warrior.
A truth no bounty could buy.
"We ride at dawn," she said. Zeke nodded. "Then let's ride far." Dawn came slow and cold, spilling gold across the ridge like a mercy it hadn't granted the night before. The ground still steamed from blood. Smoke curled from the ruins behind them, rising like a final prayer. Zeke didn't sleep, hadn't even closed his eyes. He kept watch while Isla patched the girl's bandage, her fingers careful, lips pressed tight to keep from shaking. The child clung to sleep like a cliff edge. They broke camp before the sun cleared the pines, riding west into a maze of canyons known only to ghosts and outlaws. Zeke led now, his gut coiled tight. He knew the map and the route Isla had spoken of, an old Apache trail that threaded the divide, treacherous in parts, narrow as a noose. But it was the only road that didn't lead straight into the men waiting at Fort Winters, and the bounty still burning hot in their hands. They stopped only once. The girl stirred and whimpered, and Isla held her close, whispering words Zeke didn't understand. He watched the 2 of them from the edge of a cliff, where the whole valley spread below like a wound half-healed. He'd ridden that valley before, long ago, chasing a different war. His orders had been simple: clear the land. He'd thought it meant brush, cattle, maybe a few skirmishes. But the land had meant people. Zeke turned from the view, jaw tight. "How far now?" "Half a day," Isla said. "If the pass isn't blocked. And if it is, then we fight again." He looked at her. She said it like it didn't matter. Like death was just another mile marker on this long, bitter trail. They pressed on, the horses careful on loose stone. The heat rose fast, warping the air ahead. Insects droned. The child moaned in her sleep. Zeke touched the rifle strap to his saddle, more from habit than hope. Just before noon, the canyon walls widened, and they came to a basin split by a dry creek. Isla slowed her mount, eyes scanning the cliffline. Zeke felt it too, something wrong in the quiet. Birds had stopped singing. Then came the sound of hooves.
Close.
Too close. Zeke spun just in time to see 5 riders crest the far ridge, dust curling behind them like a storm cloud. One held a flag, not a military one, but white. A trap, dressed up like mercy. "Go!" Zeke shouted. Isla kicked her horse forward, clutching the girl. Zeke covered them, rifle cracking once, twice. One rider fell. The other split, flanking. The canyon narrowed again up ahead, but only just wide enough for one horse at a time. Gunfire rang off stone. Isla disappeared into the gap. Zeke wheeled back, ducked behind a rock. His hat flew off, bullet-pierced. He aimed through smoke and caught another rider in the shoulder. The man screamed, tumbled from his horse. But they kept coming. Then he heard Isla scream his name. He didn't think. He ran. He found her around the bend, pinned down beneath an outcrop. The child had slipped from her arms, lying motionless on the gravel. A man stood above her, revolver aimed. Zeke didn't stop to aim. He hit the man full charge, the 2 of them crashing into the dirt. The gun went off, wild. Zeke punched hard. Again. Bone cracked. Isla was already moving, gathering the child, checking for breath. "She's alive," she said. Zeke rolled off the body beneath him, spitting blood. His ribs screamed, but he stood. "We're out of time." More riders thundered into the canyon mouth. Isla's horse was spooked, bucking. Zeke grabbed the girl, tossed her into Isla's arms. "There's no outrunning them now," he said. Isla looked to the cliffs, then back at Zeke. "There's another way." He followed her gaze, an old miner's path, carved into the rock wall. Nearly vertical.
Crumbling.
"We won't make it," he said. "You won't. But she might." Zeke turned to her, already shaking his head. "I'm not leaving you." Isla stepped close, pressed her forehead to his. "Then you'll die for nothing." "I've died for worse," he whispered. She kissed him, brief, but with everything unspoken between them. Then she was climbing, the girl tied to her chest, hands finding holds in the stone like she'd done it 100 times before. Zeke turned to face the riders. They came fast. He fired once, took out a horse, reloaded. Another shot. Then his rifle clicked dry. He drew his revolver. Gunfire roared around him. Stone shattered. Heat tore through his arm, red blooming across his sleeve. Still, he didn't fall. One rider came too close. Zeke pulled him down with one hand, buried his knife in the man's throat with the other. The canyon rang with the noise of death. Then, at last, silence. Zeke dropped to one knee, the world spinning. He pressed a hand to his side.
Blood.
He couldn't tell how bad. Above him, Isla and the girl had reached the ledge. She turned, silhouetted in the sun. She was shouting something, but he couldn't hear over the ringing in his ears. He smiled, a bitter, broken thing. Then he forced himself up and began to climb. It took everything. Every inch of breath, every shred of will. The rock cut his palms. His boots slipped. He gritted his teeth and kept moving. When he finally reached the top, Isla caught his hand, hauled him the last few feet. They collapsed together, the girl between them, the sun burning hot above, the canyon behind full of smoke and ghosts. They didn't speak for a long time. When the wind picked up, it carried with it only silence. No more riders. No more chase. Isla touched his shoulder. "It's over." "No," he said, staring into the distance where the land stretched wide and empty. "It's just beginning." She looked at him, her eyes no longer wary, no longer guarded, just tired and warm. Zeke reached for the girl's hand. It curled around his finger, small and strong. "Where do we go now?" Isla asked. "Somewhere they don't know our names." "Do such places still exist?" Zeke shrugged. "If not, we'll build one." And together, under the burning sky, they rode west, not as hunter and quarry, not as ghosts of a war, but as something new. A man with blood on his hands, a woman with fire in her heart, and a child who carried both worlds in her bones. Not a happy ending, but a true one.